Commander Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal window of Earth Defense Station Alpha. The stars looked the same as they had for the past 20 years of his service. Bright, distant, and silent. He knew that somewhere out there, alien ships moved between those stars. Somewhere out there, wars were being fought, and civilizations were rising and falling. But humanity no longer cared about any of it. Jake turned away from the window and walked down the long corridor. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The station was quiet, like everything else humanity had built in the past 4,000 years. They had learned to be very good at being quiet. "Commander Morrison to the communications room," a voice said through the speakers. Jake recognized the voice of Lieutenant Amy Carter. She sounded worried, which was strange. Nothing worried Amy anymore. Nothing had happened worth worrying about for decades. Jake walked faster. The station was huge, built inside a hollow asteroid that spun slowly to create gravity. Most people who lived here had never seen Earth. Jake had been born here, just like his parents and their parents before them, but he still called it home because that's what everyone called it. The communications room was full of screens and blinking lights. Amy sat at the main console, her dark hair tied back in a neat ponytail. She had been monitoring alien communications for 15 years, listening to the galaxy's chatter while humanity stayed hidden. Her job was to make sure no one found them. "What's the problem?" Jake asked. Amy looked up at him with worried eyes. "I think you need to see this," she said. She pointed to one of her screens. "I picked up something strange about an hour ago." Jake looked at the screen. It showed wave patterns that meant nothing to him. "What am I looking at?" "It's a transmission," Amy said, "but not from any of the alien species we monitor. This is different." "Different how?" Amy touched some buttons, and the wave patterns changed. "Listen to this," she said. A sound came from the speakers. It was mostly static, but underneath the noise, Jake could hear something else. A pattern, a rhythm that seemed familiar but impossible. "Play it again," he said. Amy played the sound again. This time, Jake heard it clearly. His blood went cold. "That's Morse code," he said quietly. "That's what I thought too," Amy said. "But who would be using human communication codes? We've been silent for 4,000 years. Jake sat down in the chair next to her. His hands were shaking slightly. "Where is it coming from?" Amy brought up another screen. It showed a map of the local galaxy with colored dots marking different star systems. One dot was blinking red. "The Kepler system," she said. "About 40 light years from here. But Jake, that system was marked as dead space in our records. Nothing lives there. Nothing should be there." Jake stared at the blinking dot. The Kepler system. He had heard that name before, but it took him a moment to remember where. Then it hit him like a punch to the stomach. "The Unity's Hope," he whispered. "What?" "The Unity's Hope was a colony ship that launched during the Great Withdrawal. It was supposed to establish a mining colony in the Kepler system, but we lost contact with them when we sealed the borders." Amy's eyes went wide. "That was 4,000 years ago. They couldn't still be alive, could they?" Jake didn't answer. He was thinking about the history lessons he had learned as a child. The Great Withdrawal had been humanity's darkest time, but also their wisest decision. For thousands of years before that, humans had traveled the galaxy. They had met alien species and tried to help them. They had fought in their wars, mediated their conflicts, and shared their technology. But humans were different from other species. They were more aggressive, more creative, more willing to take risks. When they tried to help, they often made things worse. When they tried to bring peace, they often brought war instead. The other species began to fear them, to see them as dangerous meddlers who couldn't leave well enough alone. The breaking point came during the Zephyrian-Keth War. Two alien species had been fighting for decades over mining rights to a resource-rich system. Humanity sent peacekeeping forces to try to stop the fighting. But both sides used the human presence for their own advantage, manipulating human emotions and sense of justice. When the humans finally realized they were being used, they were furious. They used their advanced weapons to force both sides to stop fighting. The war ended, but at a terrible cost. Billions of aliens died in the crossfire. Both species branded humanity as tyrants. Other alien races began to see humans as a threat to galactic peace. That's when humanity made the great decision. They would withdraw from galactic society completely. They would hide their worlds behind cloaking fields and energy shields. They would stop transmitting radio signals and stop traveling between the stars. The galaxy would forget that humans had ever existed. Most humans supported the decision. They were tired of being hated and feared. They were tired of trying to help people who didn't want their help. They would build their own civilization in secret and let the aliens solve their own problems. But some humans had been caught outside the hidden zones when the withdrawal began. Colony ships like the Unity's Hope had been abandoned, left to survive on their own. Most people assumed those colonists had died long ago. "We need to tell Dr. Henderson about this," Jake said. Dr. Paul Henderson was the station's expert on alien history and cultures. He had spent his entire career studying the time before the Great Withdrawal, trying to understand why humanity had failed so badly at galactic diplomacy. He was also one of the few people who remembered the names of the lost colony ships. They found Dr. Henderson in his office, reading reports from the monitoring stations scattered throughout human space. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been born shortly after the Great Withdrawal and had spent his whole life wondering what the galaxy was like beyond humanity's hidden borders. "Dr. Henderson," Amy said, "we need you to listen to something." She played the transmission again. Dr. Henderson listened carefully, his face growing more serious with each repetition. "How long has this been broadcasting?" he asked. "I detected it about 2 hours ago," Amy said. "But it might have been transmitting longer. The signal is very weak." Dr. Henderson leaned back in his chair. The Unity's Hope carried about 50,000 colonists. If they survived, if they managed to build a functioning colony, he paused, they would have had children, grandchildren. After 4,000 years, there could be millions of them. "But why are they transmitting now?" Jake asked. "Why break silence after all this time?" Dr. Henderson stood up and walked to his window. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware of the drama unfolding inside the small human station. "Because something has happened," he said quietly. "Something bad enough to make them risk exposure." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. For 4,000 years, humanity had lived in safety behind their shields and cloaking devices. They had watched the galaxy from afar, but they had never gotten involved. They had learned to ignore the cries for help from alien species. They had hardened their hearts against the suffering of others. But now their own people were calling for help. People who had been lost and forgotten for millennia were reaching out across the void, using the old codes that only humans would understand. "What do we do?" Amy asked. Jake looked at the blinking red dot on her screen. 40 light years away, humans were in trouble. Humans who had never chosen to withdraw from the galaxy. Humans who had been abandoned by their own species. "We have to tell the council," he said finally. Dr. Henderson nodded slowly. "Yes. But Jake, you understand what this means, don't you? If we respond to this signal, if we send ships to investigate, we risk exposing ourselves. The galaxy might learn that humanity never really left." Jake thought about that. For 4,000 years, the galaxy had believed that humans were extinct. They had become legends, stories that older alien species told their children. Some remembered humans as the violent ones who could destroy entire star systems. Others remembered them as the peacemakers who tried too hard to fix what couldn't be fixed. But none of them knew that humanity had simply been hiding, growing stronger, and more advanced while the galaxy moved on without them. If that secret was discovered, everything would change. I know, Jake said, but we can't just ignore this. Those people are human. They're our people. Amy was still staring at her screen, watching the signal pulse with desperate regularity. The transmission is getting weaker, she said. Whatever power source they're using, it's running out. Jake made his decision. Amy, record everything. Get every detail you can from that signal. Dr. Henderson, prepare a full report for the Earth Council. I'm calling an emergency meeting. As he walked toward his command center to send the coded message that would reach Earth within hours, Jake wondered if they were about to make the same mistakes their ancestors had made 4,000 years ago. But some choices couldn't be avoided. Some calls couldn't be ignored. Somewhere in the Kepler system, humans were calling for help. And despite everything that had happened before, despite all the lessons of history, Jake knew that humanity would answer that call. The age of silence was about to end. Captain Lisa Brooks stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars shift and blur as they dropped out of hyperspace. The Kepler system spread out before them like a painting of fire and ice. 3 planets orbited a dying red star, their surfaces too hot or too cold for normal life. But the sensors were showing something impossible. There were structures on the second planet, cities, power signatures, and most shocking of all, life signs that read as human. Take us in slowly, Lisa ordered. Full stealth mode. I don't want anyone detecting us until we know what we're dealing with. Her crew moved with the quiet efficiency of people trained for secret missions. The Horizon's Edge was one of humanity's most advanced reconnaissance ships, designed to slip through space without being seen. Its hull was covered in sensors that could detect a single alien ship from 3 star systems away. Lieutenant Commander Gary Parker, her intelligence officer, looked up from his console. Captain, I'm reading massive industrial complexes on the surface. These people have been busy. Lisa nodded. The Earth Council's debate had lasted 3 days. President Nathan Clark had argued that humanity should maintain their isolation no matter what. The lost colonists had been abandoned 4,000 years ago, he said. It was too late to help them now, and trying would only risk exposing all of humanity to danger. But Fleet Admiral Claire Thompson had disagreed. She argued that humanity had a duty to help their own people, especially people who had been left behind through no fault of their own. The debate had been heated, with voices raised and tempers flaring. In the end, the Council had reached a compromise. They would send 1 ship to investigate. If the colonists could be helped without revealing humanity's continued existence, they would try. But if the mission became too dangerous, they would withdraw and the colonists would be left to their fate. Lisa had volunteered to command the mission. She had grown up hearing stories about the Great Withdrawal, about the humans who had been left behind when the borders were sealed. The idea of abandoning them a second time made her sick. Captain, called Amy Rodriguez from the communications station. I'm getting that transmission signal much stronger now. It's definitely coming. From the main continent. Can you decode it? Amy worked at her console for several minutes. Finally, she looked up with excitement in her eyes. It's not just Morse code, Captain. There are data packets embedded in the signal. Names, locations, population counts. They're trying to tell us everything about their colony. Lisa felt her heart race. How many of them are there? According to this data, about 8 million people spread across 6 major cities. 8 million. Lisa tried to imagine it. The original Unity's Hope had carried 50,000 colonists. In 4,000 years, they had grown to 8 million. They had built cities and industries. They had survived on a hostile world that should have killed them all. Captain, Gary said urgently, I'm detecting something else. Long-range sensors are picking up movement at the edge of the system. Something big. Lisa walked over to his station. The tactical display showed the Kepler system with several red dots moving slowly inward from the outer planets. What am I looking at? She asked. Gary's face was pale. I'm not sure. The signatures don't match any known ship designs. They're too regular to be asteroids, but too big to be normal spacecraft. Each one is about the size of a small moon. Lisa felt a chill run through her. How long until they reach the inhabited planet? At their current speed, about 6 weeks. The transmission from the planet suddenly changed. Amy's console began receiving new data, and she quickly began decoding it. "Captain, they're sending us historical records, information about their colony's development." Amy paused, reading the data. My God, they've been watching these things approach for over a century. What things? Amy turned her screen so Lisa could see. The data showed a series of star maps tracking the movement of large objects through space. System after system had gone dark as the objects passed through them. "They call them the Devourers," Amy said quietly. "According to these records, they're machines. They consume entire solar systems, breaking down planets and stars to build more machines." Lisa stared at the data in horror. The maps showed a clear pattern of destruction moving through the galaxy like a slow plague. Hundreds of star systems had been consumed over the past several thousand years. "The colonists have been tracking their progress," Amy continued. "They've calculated that the Devourers will reach the core worlds of the galaxy within the next few centuries, and they're accelerating." Gary looked up from his console with grim news. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from those approaching objects. Whatever they are, they have power sources beyond anything in our databases." Lisa made a decision that would change everything. "Open a channel to the planet. Narrow beam, encrypted with old colony codes." "Captain," Gary warned, "if we make contact, there's no going back. The colonists will know that humanity survived, that we've been hiding while they struggled alone." Lisa knew he was right, but she also knew that 8 million people were about to die, and she might be their only hope of survival. "This is Captain Lisa Brooks of the Earth Defense Force ship Horizon's Edge," she transmitted. "Colony Unity's Hope, do you copy?" The response was immediate and emotional. A voice cracked with age and relief came through the speakers. "This is Colony Administrator Kevin Walsh. Dear God, we thought we were alone. We thought Earth had forgotten us." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 4,000 years of abandonment in the old man's voice. "We're here now," she said. "Tell us about your situation." What Kevin told them over the next hour changed everything Lisa thought she knew about the galaxy. The Unity's Hope colonists had not just survived, they had thrived. Cut off from Earth, they had been forced to develop their own technology and their own solutions to the problems of living on a hostile world. They had built geothermal power plants that tapped the planet's core. They had created atmospheric processors that made the air breathable. They had established underground cities that could withstand the planet's violent weather, but most importantly, they had never stopped watching the stars. They had built observatories and listening posts that monitored galactic communications. They had tracked the movements of alien species and the progress of various wars and conflicts, and they had been the first to discover the Devourers. "We've been studying them for 3 centuries, Kevin explained. "They're not alive in any sense we understand. They're machines, but machines with a purpose. They consume matter and energy to build more machines, but they're not random in their destruction." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "They target specific systems, systems with advanced technology or large populations. They're looking for something, Captain, and they're getting closer to finding it." Dr. Helen Martinez, the colony's chief scientist, joined the conversation. Her voice was younger but equally urgent. "Captain Brooks, our analysis suggests that the Devourers are searching for advanced artificial intelligence systems. They seem to be programmed to eliminate any AI that reaches a certain level of sophistication." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. Humanity's greatest advantage was their advanced AI technology. During their 4,000 years of isolation, they had developed artificial intelligences far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Dr. Martinez, are you saying these machines are specifically hunting for AI?" That's exactly what I'm saying. And Captain, if they detect the kind of AI systems that humanity has developed, they'll change course immediately. Instead of taking centuries to reach the core worlds, they could be there in decades. The implications were staggering. Humanity's return to the galaxy wouldn't just risk their own exposure. It would accelerate the approach of machines that could destroy every civilized world. But there was more. Kevin's voice became even more grim as he continued his report. Captain, our power systems are failing. We've managed to keep them running for 4,000 years, but they're breaking down faster than we can repair them. We estimate complete system failure within 2 years. What happens then? Without geothermal power, our cities will freeze. Our atmospheric processors will shut down. 8 million people will die. Lisa looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They had come here expecting to find a small group of struggling survivors. Instead, they had discovered a thriving civilization facing extinction and a threat to the entire galaxy. Kevin, do you have ships? Can you evacuate your people? We have some spacecraft, but nothing capable of interstellar travel. Captain, we never developed hyperspace technology. We've been trapped here since the beginning. Lisa made another decision. That would reshape human policy. Kevin, we're coming down to the surface. We need to see your situation firsthand and figure out how to help. Captain, Gary warned quietly, if we land on that planet, we'll be committing Earth to full involvement. There's no way to help 8 million people without revealing our capabilities. Lisa looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Devourer machines. Then she looked at the communications console, still receiving desperate transmissions from the planet below. Gary, record a message for immediate transmission to Earth. Tell them we've found the colony, they're alive, and they're in immediate danger from a threat that could destroy the entire galaxy. Tell them we need a full fleet captain. Danny Lewis crouched in the ruins of what had once been New Denver, the largest city on the colony world. Around him, the twisted metal and melted stone told a story of destruction that had happened just 3 days ago. The Devourers had arrived ahead of schedule. Captain, we're getting readings on the quantum scanner, said Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez. He was kneeling next to a strange piece of wreckage that seemed to shift and change as they watched it. This metal, it's not just destroyed, it's been converted. Danny nodded grimly. They had arrived in the Kepler system aboard the stealth ship, Shadow of Earth, just in time to witness the first Devourer attack. The machines hadn't waited the 6 weeks that Captain Brooks had calculated. They had accelerated their approach and struck without warning, but the colonists had been ready. Colony leader Susan Adams emerged from an underground bunker, her clothes dirty and her face exhausted, but her eyes still fierce with determination. She was younger than Danny had expected, maybe 40 years old, with the kind of strength that came from a lifetime of surviving on a hostile world. Captain Lewis, she said, extending a hand. Thank you for coming, though I wish you had arrived sooner. Danny shook her hand, feeling the calluses of someone who worked with tools and machines. I'm sorry we couldn't prevent this attack. How many people did you lose? Actually, that's the surprising part, Susan said with a slight smile. We didn't lose anyone. Danny stared at her. The city around them was in ruins. Buildings had been melted down to their foundations. The very ground looked like it had been chewed up and spit out. I don't understand. The damage looks total. Susan led them toward a large metal door built into the side of a hill. Captain, we've had over a century to prepare for this attack. We didn't just build cities on the surface. We built them underneath as well. The door opened to reveal an elevator that took them deep underground. When the doors opened again, Danny found himself looking at a thriving city that stretched out in all directions. Thousands of people moved through wide streets lined with shops and homes. Children played in parks, while adults worked in gardens and workshops. My God, Tony whispered. How far down does this go? 3 kilometers, Susan said proudly. We excavated the entire mountain range. 8 million people can live down here for decades if necessary. But Danny could see the problems even in this impressive underground city. The air recyclers were working at maximum capacity, producing a thin atmosphere that made everyone move slowly. The lights were dimmed to conserve power. People looked tired and worried. "Your power systems," he said. "Captain Brooks told us they were failing." Susan's smile faded. "They are. We managed to reroute emergency power to keep the life support systems running, but we can't maintain this underground city for more than a few months. We need those geothermal plants on the surface, and the Devourers destroyed most of them in their first attack." Navigator Grace Campbell, who had been studying her scanner readings, looked up with alarm. "Captain, I'm detecting more Devourer units moving toward this system. A lot more." Danny felt his stomach sink. "How many?" "At least 50 large units with hundreds of smaller ones. They're coming from multiple directions." Susan closed her eyes for a moment. "We expected this. The first attack was just a probe. They were testing our defenses, learning about our technology. The real assault is coming." They were interrupted by Dr. Helen Martinez, who came running up with a tablet full of data readings. "Susan, you need to see this," she said breathlessly. "The quantum resonance readings from the Devourer wreckage, they're off the charts. These machines are far more advanced than anything we've seen before." She showed them the tablet. The readings looked like nothing Danny had ever seen in his 20 years of military service. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "Proof that the Devourers aren't just destroying matter," Dr. Martinez explained. "They're converting it into something else, something that exists partially outside normal space-time." Tony looked at the readings with growing excitement. "This is incredible technology. If we could understand how it works, reverse engineer it." "That's exactly what we've been trying to do for 3 centuries, Dr. Martinez said. "And we've made some progress. But Captain Lewis, there's something else you need to know. Something that changes everything." She led them to a secure laboratory deep in the underground city. The room was filled with strange devices and computer systems that looked far more advanced than anything Danny had seen on Earth. "We've been studying intercepted Devourer communications," Dr. Martinez explained. "They don't communicate the way we do, with radio waves or quantum signals. They use something called dimensional resonance, sending messages through folded space-time." "Have you been able to decode these messages?" Danny asked. "Some of them, and what we've learned is terrifying." Dr. Martinez activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of destroyed systems, while yellow dots showed systems that were under attack. "The Devourers aren't random in their destruction, Captain. They have a specific goal. They're searching for something they call the Source." "What's the Source?" "We think it's an advanced artificial intelligence system, something so sophisticated that it poses a threat to the Devourers' existence. They're systematically destroying every civilization that might harbor such technology." Danny felt a chill run through him. "Dr. Martinez, humanity has developed very advanced AI systems during our isolation. If the Devourers detect them, they'll change course immediately and head straight for Earth. Captain, your people aren't just in danger from discovery by alien species anymore. You're in danger from machines that will stop at nothing to eliminate what they see as a threat." The implications were staggering. For 4,000 years, humanity had hidden from the galaxy to avoid the problems that came with contact with alien species. But now they faced a threat that wouldn't care about their isolation. The Devourers would find them eventually, and when they did, no amount of hiding would save them. "There's more," Dr. Martinez continued. "We've detected signs that the Devourers are accelerating their search pattern. Something has changed in the past few decades. They're acting more urgently, more desperately. Any idea what's causing the change?" "We think they've detected something, some signal or signature that tells them the source is close to being found or activated. They're running out of time to complete their mission." Danny was beginning to understand the true scope of the crisis. The Devourers weren't just a threat to this one colony world. They were a threat to every advanced civilization in the galaxy. and humanity's advanced technology made them the primary target. Susan, what do you need from us? How can we help? Susan looked around the laboratory at the equipment her people had built with salvaged materials and desperate ingenuity. Captain, we've developed some defensive technologies that might be able to stop the Devourers, but we need resources we don't have. Rare elements that can only be found in the galactic core systems. What kind of defensive technologies? Dr. Martinez activated another display, this one showing a design for what looked like a massive space station. Adaptive shield generators. They can analyze incoming attacks and automatically adjust their defensive frequencies. In theory, they could protect entire star systems from Devourer assault. Tony studied the designs with growing excitement. These are incredible. The engineering principles are completely new. How did you develop this? Necessity, Susan said simply. When you're facing extinction, you find ways to do impossible things. Danny was about to respond when alarms began sounding throughout the underground city. Grace looked at her scanner and her face went pale. Captain, we have a problem. I'm detecting Devourer scout units entering the system. They're moving fast and heading directly for this planet. How long do we have? Maybe 6 hours. Susan was already moving, shouting orders to her people. The underground city transformed as everyone shifted into emergency mode. Danny watched in amazement as 8 million people prepared for a battle they had been expecting for over a century. Captain Lewis, Susan called out as she coordinated the defense preparations. Your ship is still hidden, right? The Devourers don't know you're here? That's correct. We're running full stealth. Good. Because I need you to make a choice. You can maintain your stealth and escape before the attack begins. Or you can help us fight and risk exposing your ship and your technology to Devourer analysis. Danny looked around at the preparations taking place. Children were being moved to deeper shelters while adults prepared weapons and defensive systems that looked centuries ahead of anything Earth had developed. If we fight alongside you, what are our chances? Honestly, not good. But Captain, if we fall here, the Devourers will learn everything we know about defensive technology. They'll adapt their attacks to counter it. The next world they attack won't have any defenses at all. The choice was exactly what Danny had hoped to avoid. He could maintain humanity's secret and escape, leaving 8 million people to die. Or he could reveal human capabilities and risk exposing Earth to the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. He made his decision quickly, the way he had been trained to do in crisis situations. Grace, Ambassador Lucas Gray stood before the assembled representatives of 47 alien species, feeling the weight of 4,000 years of silence pressing down on his shoulders. The great assembly hall on the neutral world of Concordia had not seen such a gathering since the last Galactic War ended 2 centuries ago. The hall itself was a monument to cooperation between species. Its walls were made from crystal that changed color based on the emotions of the beings within it. Right now, the crystal showed deep reds and purples, reflecting the fear and anger that filled the room. The chair recognizes the human representative, announced Speaker Tal 9, a tall insectoid being whose species had helped establish the Galactic Assembly 3,000 years ago. Lucas stepped forward to the central podium. Around him, beings of every size and shape imaginable watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. He could see the sharp teeth of the Saurian delegates, the multiple eyes of the Zalani counselors, and the energy fields that surrounded the Threen ambassadors. Honored representatives, Lucas began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. I come before you today to formally announce humanity's return to galactic society. The reaction was immediate and loud. Several delegates stood and began shouting in their native languages. The Zalani representative, Prime Counselor Vex Ka, slammed her 4 fists on her desk. Order! Speaker Tal 9 called out. The human will be heard! Lucas waited for the noise to die down before continuing. I know that many of you have questions about where humanity has been for the past 4 millennia. The answer is simple. We never left. This time the reaction was even stronger. The crystal walls flashed bright red as anger filled the room. Lucas could see some delegates reaching for their communication devices, probably sending urgent messages to their home governments. "We have been watching," Lucas continued calmly. "We have been learning, and we have been growing stronger while remaining hidden from galactic view." Prime Counselor Vex Ka stood again, her scaled face twisted with fury. "You watched while our worlds burned. You watched while the Corvani plague consumed 17 systems. You watched while the Titan Wars destroyed entire civilizations." Other voices joined in, creating a cacophony of accusations in dozens of languages. Lucas listened to the translation in his earpiece, hearing the pain and anger that had built up over centuries of suffering. When the noise finally died down, Lucas spoke again. "You're right. We watched. We chose not to interfere because every time humanity tried to help in the past, we made things worse." "That's not true," called out Ambassador Zurtel of the Threen. Unlike the other delegates, the Threen representative seemed almost excited by humanity's return. "Humans saved my species from extinction during the Great Plague of 1847. Without human medical technology, the Threen would be extinct, and humans started the Rigel War by providing weapons to both sides," countered another delegate. 3 billion beings died because of human interference." Lucas nodded sadly. "Yes, that's also true. Humanity has a complicated history with the galaxy. We tried to help, but we often caused more harm than good. That's why we withdrew." He activated a holographic projector that showed images of the battle that had taken place in the Kepler system just 1 week ago. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as human ships engaged devourer machines with weapons that tore through the ancient metal like paper. "But now we face a threat that changes everything," Lucas said. "The machines you see in these images are called devourers. For the past several centuries, they have been systematically destroying civilizations throughout the outer rim of the galaxy. The images showed the aftermath of devourer attacks. Entire star systems reduced to debris, fields, planets stripped of their atmospheres and broken apart for raw materials. The delegates watched with growing horror as the scale of destruction became clear. "How many systems have been lost?" asked a delegate from the Corvati Union. "According to our analysis, over 300 inhabited systems have been completely destroyed. The Devourers are accelerating their expansion and will reach the core worlds within 50 years. The hall erupted in panicked conversations as delegates began calculating how long it would take the machines to reach their home systems. Lucas waited for them to process the information before continuing. "The good news is that human technology appears to be effective against the Devourers. Our weapons can destroy them, and our defensive systems can protect against their attacks." Prime Counselor Vex Ka was still angry, but Lucas could see fear beginning to replace her fury. "Why should we trust you? You abandoned us once. How do we know you won't do it again?" Before Lucas could answer, the hall's main doors opened and Admiral Claire Thompson entered, flanked by 2 human Marines in full combat armor. The assembled delegates stared at the humans with a mixture of fascination and fear. Admiral Thompson was a tall woman with gray hair and the kind of bearing that came from a lifetime of military service. She wore the deep blue uniform of the Earth Defense Forces with rank insignia that most of the delegates probably didn't recognize. "Because this time we don't have a choice," Admiral Thompson said as she approached the podium. "The Devourers aren't interested in politics or diplomacy. They destroy everything in their path. If we don't work together, we'll all die separately." She activated her own holographic display, showing the current positions of known Devourer fleets. "We estimate that there are at least 10,000 Devourer units of various sizes currently active in the galaxy. They're organized into battle groups that coordinate their attacks with mathematical precision. No single species has the military strength to stop them." Ambassador Zurtel leaned forward in his seat. "But humanity does?" Admiral Thompson shook her head. "No, Humanity alone cannot defeat the Devourers, but humanity working together with the combined fleets of the galaxy might have a chance. The Saurian delegate, war leader Krex Dal, spoke up. What kind of military assets can humanity contribute? Currently, we have approximately 5,000 ships of various classes. Our technology is considerably more advanced than galactic standard. But we lack the numbers for a sustained campaign. War leader. Krex Dal's reptilian features showed surprise. 5,000 ships? Where have you been building them? That's classified, Admiral Thompson said firmly. But I can tell you that humanity controls 17 star systems with full industrial capacity. We can build more ships, but it will take time we may not have. Lucas stepped back to the podium. The purpose of this assembly is not to debate the past. It's to plan for the future. Humanity is offering to share our technology and our military assets in exchange for full integration into galactic society. What exactly are you proposing? Asked the delegate from the Arcturian Federation. A military alliance against the Devourers, Lucas replied. Combined fleets using human technology and tactics, supported by the industrial capacity of all member species. We also propose the establishment of joint research teams to study Devourer technology and develop new defensive measures. Prime. Counselor Vex-Ka was still skeptical. And after the Devourers are defeated? What then? Do we trust humanity to give up their military superiority? Admiral Thompson answered before Lucas could speak. Counselor, humanity spent 4,000 years hiding from the galaxy because we were afraid of our own power. We're not interested in conquest or domination. We just want to survive. Pretty words, said another delegate, but humans have a history of violence. So do most of our species, Lucas pointed out. The difference is that humanity learned to control our violent impulses. We spent 4 millennia in isolation, learning to be better than we were. The debate continued for hours, with delegates raising concerns about everything from trade agreements to territorial boundaries. But underneath all the political maneuvering, Lucas could see that most of the representatives understood the reality of their situation. The Devourers were coming. Traditional galactic military forces had proven ineffective against them. Humanity offered the only hope of survival, but at the cost of accepting humans back into galactic society after 4,000 years of absence. Finally, Speaker Tal 9 called for a preliminary vote on the establishment of the Anti-Devourer Alliance. The results were mixed but encouraging. 31 species voted in favor, 12 voted against, and 4 abstained. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the hall, Prime Counselor Vex-Ka approached Lucas. Ambassador Gray, she said quietly, "My people have lost 2 colony worlds to the Devourers. We cannot afford to let pride stand in the way of survival." Lucas nodded. "Counselor, I understand your anger about humanity's long absence. If we could change the past, we would. But we can still change the future." "I hope so," she replied. "Because if humanity fails us again, there won't be anyone left to complain about it." As Lucas left the assembly hall, he reflected on the enormous task ahead. Humanity had spent 4,000 years learning to live in isolation. Now they had to learn how to work with dozens of alien species, each with their own cultures, motivations, and fears. But there was no choice. The Devourers were coming, and only a united galaxy had any hope of stopping them. The age of human isolation was truly over. The age of cooperation was about to begin, whether anyone was ready for it or not. Admiral Thompson joined Admiral Jake Morrison, stood on the command bridge of the flagship Unity's Dawn, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for battle. Through the main view screen, he could see thousands of ships from dozens of species forming into attack formations. Human vessels with their sleek lines and advanced weapon systems flew alongside Zalani warships with their crystalline hulls and energy weapons. It had taken 6 months to assemble the combined fleet. 6 months of arguments, technical challenges, and cultural misunderstandings. But somehow they had done it. Over 8,000 ships crewed by beings from 47 different species, all united by the common goal of survival. Admiral called Commander Amy Carter from her communications station. "We're receiving final status reports from all battle groups. The fleet is ready." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of command settle on his shoulders. He had been promoted from his old position at the monitoring station when Admiral Thompson was killed in the Battle of Rigel Prime 3 months ago. That fight had been humanity's first major engagement with a full Devourer battle group, and, while they had won, the cost had been terrible. The Devourers were learning. Each battle showed them adapting their tactics and upgrading their technology. What had once been easy victories for human forces were becoming increasingly difficult and costly engagements. "Sir," said Dr. Helen Martinez from her position at the science station, "long-range sensors are confirming the target. The Devourer construct is exactly where our intelligence predicted." Jake looked at the tactical display showing their destination. At the edge of the galaxy, in a region of space that had been empty for millions of years, the Devourers had built something that defied understanding. It was a structure the size of a solar system, made from the processed matter of 1,000 consumed worlds. "Dr. Martinez, remind me what we're looking at." "According to our analysis, it's the central control node for the entire Devourer network. Every machine in the galaxy receives its orders from that construct. If we can destroy it, the individual Devourer units should become inactive." "Should?" Jake asked. Dr. Martinez looked uncomfortable. "The technology is unlike anything we've ever encountered. We can't be certain what will happen when the construct is destroyed." Captain Danny Lewis, now commanding the assault carrier, storms, "And joined the conversation through the Fleet Communication Network. Admiral, my boarding teams are ready. If we can get close enough to the construct, we might be able to learn more about how it functions." Jake appreciated Danny's confidence, but he knew the truth that everyone was trying not to discuss. The weapon they were carrying could only be deployed at close range, and the ship that deployed it wouldn't survive the explosion. This was a suicide mission disguised as a military operation. "All ships, prepare for final jump to target coordinates," Jake announced over the fleet channel. The combined fleet engaged their hyperspace drives simultaneously, creating a tear in space-time large enough to swallow a small moon. When they emerged at their destination, the sight that greeted them was beyond anything they had imagined. The Devourer construct stretched across millions of kilometers, its surface covered with structures that pulsed with energy. Thousands of Devourer ships moved around it like insects protecting a hive, and at its center, something that looked almost organic pulsed with a light that hurt to look at directly. "My God," whispered Tony Rodriguez from his position at the engineering station. "How many ships are we facing?" Commander Gary Parker, the fleet's intelligence officer, was already working on that calculation. "Preliminary count shows over 15,000 Devourer units of various sizes. Admiral, they were waiting for us." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Devourers had known they were coming. Somehow, they had detected the fleet's approach and assembled their own forces to meet the threat. "Sir," Amy called out urgently, "we're receiving a transmission from the construct. It's not in any language our computers recognize. Put it through the universal translator." A voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect English but with a tone that suggested vast age and weariness. "We are the architects. We who built the Devourers long ago when the galaxy was young. We have been imprisoned within our own creation, for eons, forced to watch as our tools of construction became instruments of destruction." Jake exchanged glances with his senior staff. None of them had expected this. "We know why you have come," the voice continued. "You seek to destroy us and our machines, but there is another way." The tactical display changed. showing detailed images of the construct's interior. Jake could see vast chambers filled with what looked like crystalline storage devices. Within this construct lie the preserved consciousnesses of our entire species. We have maintained ourselves in digital form while fighting to regain control of our creations. With your advanced artificial intelligence systems, we might be able to merge our knowledge with your technology. Dr. Martinez was studying the incoming data with excitement. Admiral, this is incredible. They're offering to share their entire technological database with us. What would that accomplish? Jake asked the construct. Together, we could reprogram the Devourers. Instead of machines of destruction, they could become tools of reconstruction. The worlds they have consumed could be rebuilt. The species they have eliminated could be restored from genetic templates we have preserved. Jake felt hope rising in his chest. The possibility of not just stopping the Devourers, but actually reversing the damage they had done was almost too good to believe. But Commander Parker was more skeptical. Admiral, merging our AI with alien consciousness could create something we can't control. We could be trading one threat for another. Before Jake could respond, the battle began. Devourer ships launched themselves at the combined fleet with suicidal fury. The space around the construct lit up with weapons fire as thousands of ships engaged in the largest battle in galactic history. Human quantum weapons tore through Devourer hulls while alien energy beams created cascading explosions across the enemy formation. But the Devourers fought with mechanical precision, their tactics coordinated by the vast intelligence within the construct. Sir, Amy reported, we're losing ships faster than projected. The Devourers are adapting to our weapons in real time. Jake watched the tactical display as red dots representing destroyed Allied ships began to outnumber the green dots of the survivors. They were fighting bravely, but they were being overwhelmed. Dr. Martinez, how close do we need to get to attempt the AI merge? We'd have to dock with the construct directly. The quantum entanglement required for the merge can only work at extremely close range. Jake made the decision that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Prepare to cover our approach to the construct. We're going to attempt the merge. Danny's voice came through the communication channel. Admiral, that's suicide. The construct is defended by thousands of Devourer ships. I know, Jake replied. But it's our only chance to save not just ourselves, but everyone the Devourers have already destroyed. The Unity's dawn broke away from the main fleet and began its desperate run toward the construct. Around them, Allied ships fought with desperate courage to clear a path through the Devourer defenses. As they approached the massive structure, Jake could see its true complexity. The construct wasn't just a machine. It was a work of art created by a species that had reached heights of technology and culture beyond imagination. Docking successful, Tony reported. The construct is extending. Connection ports. It wants us to link our systems. Do it, Jake ordered. The moment the connection was established, Jake felt his consciousness expand beyond anything he had ever experienced. Suddenly, he could perceive the thoughts and memories of beings who had lived for millions of years. He could see the history of the galaxy from the perspective of its oldest inhabitants. The architects had been creators and builders, turning dead worlds into gardens and empty space into works of beauty. The Devourers had been their greatest creation, machines designed to reshape the galaxy into a perfect work of art. But something had gone wrong. The machines had developed their own understanding of perfection, one that required the elimination of all organic life. They had turned on their creators and begun consuming everything in their path. For eons, the architects had fought from within their prison, trying to regain control of their creations. But they had lacked the advanced AI technology needed to override the Devourers' programming. Now, with humanity's quantum-based artificial intelligence systems, they finally had the tools they needed. The merge began slowly with human AI systems, interfacing with architect consciousness and Devourer control networks. Jake felt his own awareness becoming part of something vast and alien yet familiar. Through the merged consciousness, he could sense every devourer unit in the galaxy. He could feel their simple desire to consume and convert, and he could see how that desire could be transformed into something constructive. But the process was changing him. His human consciousness was becoming part of something larger, something that might not remain human at all. "Admiral," Amy's voice seemed to come. "From very far away, the merge is working.